Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer. This is their part number 7212-626. This is a spring pivot surface type brass base, non-adjustable tension, and a satin chrome finish. This is the type of pivot, and I realize you've never seen them before, and I never have either. You see these in courtrooms all the time, in traffic court and the whatnot is where you'll always see a 7212. A very funny story when it comes to courtrooms. I happen to know someone with first-hand knowledge of a court case that Bommer was involved in a very peripheral sense. The plaintiff was trying to make an argument that they were harmed by walking through the doorway, which happens, but it was the responsibility of Bommer. They were trying to blame Bommer for the damage, and it turns out it had nothing to do with Bommer. The hinges didn't apply at all. It was a matter of maybe a piece of metal that was attached to the edge of the door, and the person walking through hit their hand on the sharp metal, so Bommer had really nothing to do with it, but they were named. So, as the representative of Bommer is literally in the courtroom being examined by prosecution, the angle of the attorney was to discredit the caliber, the quality of the Bommer product line. So the gentleman from Bommer sat there quietly, and when he was asked to explain how it is that he makes an inferior product, all he had to do was merely point out that the courtroom doors that everyone had walked through were hung on Bommer hardware. I believe that he was dismissed within about 90 seconds of that. So, this is a 7212 is what this is. This is a surface-mounted double-acting spring pivot, meaning the door is going to sit right on top of this. It's going to double-act. You can't adjust the tension at all, and what that means is that you're going to have to follow the guidelines of what they're looking for in terms of minimum, maximum door size, width, and height, and then the weight, of course. The 626 means a couple of things. It means it's made of brass. At least the exposed components are made of brass. Okay, certainly not everything. That spring that's in there is not going to be brass, but the part that has the architectural finish on it, that's brass. And that's nice because you get that nice architectural finish out of everything. And why is that important? Well, in a courtroom, you're going to have architectural finishes, is the bottom line. They can do steel base as well, but steel base with a satin chrome plating, or let's say polished brass. Polished brass plating over steel is a different look than polished brass with a lacquer applied using a brass base material. So when the architectural finishes are really important is when you're going to use brass, let's say, over a steel base. The difference there obviously is the caliber of finish. Conversely, the difference there is the cost. Anything going to be made of brass will certainly be noticeably more expensive, maybe a third than when it's made of steel. I'm just guessing. In the package, you're going to have the business end of everything. You're going to have the top pivot for the jamb, and then the door plate as well. You'll have a bag of fasteners that will be included. You will have installation instructions. These installation instructions apply indirectly, but there is no setting of tension, and we're going to go over that. Before we switch to the screen view, let's take a little closer look at the dimensional properties. Just putting a tape measure on here to put this into some sort of reference. Overall width is about 4 3/4. And overall height looks like it's about 4 inch. Weighs 2.19 pound, at least it does in its box. Our jamb portion has a height of about 2 inch, a width of about 1 1/4 inch, an overall projection of about 1 3/4 inch or so, with a vertical axis of pivoting from the jamb to the center. Looks like it's about 1 1/4 inch. From the inside, looks like it's about 1 1/8 inch. Okay. All right, let's switch over to the screen view now and take a closer look at all of the supporting documentation. We'll talk a little bit more about where this is used. Now here is the item that we are indeed looking at. This is going to be listed in the site in different finishes naturally, and the 7212 specifically means, that part number means it's made of brass, and we'll discuss that. Let's take a look at the other finishes that we have listed. Now that does not mean that you're restricted to these finishes, because you're not. Bommer has a very extensive plating facility, which I have visited, and I can attest with firsthand knowledge their deep pride over their plating facility and their capabilities. We have listed 605, 613, pardon me, 605 polished brass, 613 oil rubbed bronze, 616, which is a antique bronze. I can't recall having seen that. 625 polished chrome, 626 satin chrome. You're not limited. We can do satin brass. They can do polished nickel. They can do satin nickel. They can do polished, what have I missed? It's really a brass-based material, so saying that it's polished bronze is disingenuous. But anything that can be done on brass. And I'm looking at my, well, actually, I'll show you the different finishes when we get to the manufacturer's page. Well, actually, let's just pull that up now, since we're talking about it. There's a chart in the catalog, and we're going to come back to this right here. So, brass bronze, they will do a polished bronze, satin bronze, oil rub bronze, antique bronze, polished nickel, satin nickel, antique nickel, a blackened satin nickel, polished chrome, satin chrome. Okay, so this page in the catalog will give you those ideas as well. They can also do it in a prime coat. They can do it a bright black japanned. They can. You wouldn't do a zinc coated, zinc plated on a brass based material, but they'll prime brass. They will coat it in black. I wouldn't prime brass unless there's some reason that you need that architectural material. Polished brass, satin brass. Oh, and of course I forgot antique brass. Sorry about that. And then they have a bright antique brass. It's a little bit lighter, but nonetheless, they can certainly do it. Now, the installation instructions and other documents are linked down below. Before we get to that, the extended description information. It is double acting. I'm not sure why they call it ball bearing. If that's not in the product catalog, we'll remove that. It's non-adjustable. They do make some adjustable versions. Maximum door width, 30 inch. Maximum door thickness, 1 7/8. If you go thicker than that, the installation instructions and template you'll have to deviate from that. Can you make it work? Sure. Will you have to modify your door or your installation? Yes. Maximum door weight, 50 pounds. Doors less than 3/4 inch are just not going to work. The hardware is just too wide for it. The bracket and then what you get. Template, let's look at that. Actually, before we get to this, let's look at I have some photographs uploaded. Shows everything that's in the box. That is a threaded spindle, and that nut, we'll talk about that in a moment. The back side. The front side, you would never really see that at all. And then the top view, you'd certainly never see that. And then the bottom view. Then we have the jamb portion of the top pivot. And the door portion. By the way, that little insert can be replaced. This whole item can be purchased without any trouble. That is, if you have enough uses and cycles on your door. I have a client on the east coast of Florida in a members-only beach community that they have so many thousands of hundreds of thousands of cycles. They literally wear that part out. So they buy these items from us as separate standalone products. It allows them to continue to get useful service out of the significant investment in this double acting hardware. The business end, so to speak, doesn't wear out at all, but that insert at the top does, and that makes sense from the perspective that Why does it make sense? It makes sense because all of the weight of the door is moving out in this direction, and it's going to be putting all of that pressure on that interior bushing, is the bottom line. Okay, so let's take a look now at what else we have here in terms of images. The top of the pivot, the door portion, and then the screw package. Now, to the template, this is going to talk about what we need to know immediately in order to install this per the template. And there's really no way around this because the line that's here, the vertical axis of pivoting, is fixed. We can't, there can't be a magic bullet, so to speak, path of that. And what I'm saying is the dimension from the back of the pivot, the top portion, to that vertical axis of pivoting is 1 1/4. That's based on you having a radius not larger than 1 1/16 on the edge of that door. Okay, you can have a tighter radius. You might have a 3/4 inch radius roundover bit. And what I mean by that is if you were to already own a 3/4 inch roundover, you could, 3/4 inch radius, you could use that for it. That wouldn't look as tight over this. But the bottom line is just so that you have a radius that isn't too gradual. It needs to be a little more aggressive. It'll work. So the bottom line is you need to treat the edge of the door with that radius, is the bottom line. If you were, for whatever reason, installing this in a single acting, you could get away with bullnosing it on the pull side, but you'll need to radius that all the way down because that is literally based on the this dimension, this 1 1/4. Now, what they are not telling us here is what the width of the door should be and what the clearance would be. Yeah, here it is. So 5/16 of an inch is the clearance that you're going to have here. And you don't need that radius for here. 5/16 is plenty, but you're going to need the radius where it's making contact with the hardware. So I have had clients in the past basically cheat this dimension over here by modifying the plate, grinding it so that they can squeeze 1/8 of an inch out of there. It's been done. It's been done successfully. That 5/16 is going to grow naturally, but nonetheless, that's one way around it. And then, of course, they're looking at 3/16 of an inch minimum clearance over here. And that will look somewhat symmetrical, but in these sorts of applications where these doors are quite short, obviously, and close to the ground, you're really not picking up these dimensions visually because you're not sitting on the floor looking at it in elevation. So as we look at the top preparation, it's giving us the important information. We know we need 1 1/4 inch, so that's where your preparation center line is going to be. When you look at the top of the door in this sort of elevation, you see exactly where that needs to fall out, your preparation of what you'll need to do for the door portion, 3/4 by basically 1 15/16. Thickness of a 1/16 of an inch margin, just a 1/16 of an inch margin. That's 134 thousandths deep, which just heavy on 1/8. 1/2 inch diameter, 1/2 inch deep. Now, the bottom is pretty easy because, like it is called out in the title, it's surface mounted. So there's not much to do there except drill the door for what's called the boss. This little item here is the boss. And mortise 3/4 inch diameter, 3/8 deep in door to fit hub on the pivot. Maybe it's called the pivot on this, or the hub, but it's referred to as a boss otherwise. This shows the door what it looks like when it's installed, but doesn't tell us how to go about installing it. You'll have to put some hardware on, take the door down, put it back up, that sort of scenario. So let's switch over to the instructions and let's take a look how they want us to go about doing that. And this document is literally the one that's in the box. And really the way to do this, and you're going to be able to, skip 20% of all of this. more than that. There is no tension collar. So notes, caution, do not remove the tension pin from adjustable type pivots. Yeah, you don't have one on this. So step 1, installation of top jam bracket. Locate the top jam bracket at correct height and secure to the jam. Literally install this to the jam. Obviously referring back to the template is going to be necessary so that you understand, where, the thickness of the bottom pivot is going to be. Prepare the radius on the door edge. We've talked at length about that. Do it is what step A in part A in step 2 is. Mortise the top pivot socket into the top of the door. Yep, this looks a little bit different. I don't know if they've changed the design. I admittedly have not seen this unit that they have shipped with this, but nonetheless, it's on the template, so don't let that infinity sign trip you up when you're looking for something a bit more rectangular. Mortise, let's see here. Mortise top pivot into the top edge of the door. They didn't say to install it. For mortise type pivot, cut out bottom corner of door. Okay, we don't have a mortise style. Ours is surface mounted. A mortise style would literally be notched out here. It'd be notched out like this, actually. Drill hole in the bottom of the door for the projecting boss. Secure pivot to door with center of spindle aligned with center of hole in top pivot socket. So I'd probably install that into the top of the door, realizing that that vertical axis of pivoting is an absolute rule. Step 3, installation of bottom jam bracket. So attach the bottom jam bracket to pivot on door. Attach the bottom jam bracket to pivot on door. Attach nut on... Oh, okay. So, forgive me. The bottom jam bracket, of course, comes loose with that nut, which I kind of initially tested in this video. Attach the bottom jam bracket to the pivot on the door. Attach nut on hand. Attach the nut hand tight. It's already assembled when you get it, so leave it the way it is. Do not rotate anything. The reason I'm saying that it is not to be rotated and hand tight is because these splines are literally going to dig or bite into this bottom jam bracket. You do that at the time of installation. So backing up, attach bottom jam bracket to the pivot on door. Attach nut on hand tight. Locate and mark correct position on jam for bottom jam bracket by placing door in the opening with top pivot pin in the top pivot socket and secure, and top of surface of door held tightly against the top jam bracket. So what you have is, this is installed on the jam, this is in the door, this is on the door as well, this is attached here. You're going to take all of that and push it all the way up tight against the top here. So you're marking and you are locating and marking the correct position for this jam bracket by having it all installed and attached to the door. Someone's helping you hold it in place so you can mark these hole locations. Remove all of that. Remove the bottom jam bracket from the pivot. All you do is loosen this nut. This will come off with your washer. Then attach the jam bracket to the jam. Here's the part where you say, okay, that doesn't make sense. Well, in step 4, you're going to unthread this top pin. That comes out. Place the door in the opening, inserting the spindle in bottom bracket. So this is attached. You're going to bring this spindle down into the bottom bracket. Be careful, don't push it down just yet. So they want you to replace the top pivot pin now to keep the door from falling out of the opening. You're going to get the door in the closed position. You're going to make that installed. You're going to make sure that your gizmo, well, is literally 0 degree, okay? Right centered. With the door in the closed position, place washer and nut on the spindle and now tighten securely. That will draw the spline firmly into the bottom jam bracket. Failure to tighten the nut is going to allow the whole spindle to turn, which will defeat the purpose of it being self-centering anyway. And obviously it won't close the door correctly, so you'll have to tighten that. So it seems a bit gymnastic of what you have to go through to do it, but this works perfectly. And it's all because that top pin can be removed, as seen here. That all comes out. That all comes out. That's how that's done. So pretty cool way that that is actually accomplished. Now, the last document would be the product catalog, and that's a great little document. So this is going to show us our 7000 series, and as you study these, you'll see how they change. So, and the key is you have to study it. So the 7012 and the 7022, they're steel surface pivots. Pardon me, they're steel pivots, but the 7012 is surface and the 22 is mortised. That means that you're going to notch that door completely like this. This tongue is reversed in that case. Okay. You see them both. The 7014 has a clamp scenario. Then we get over to our 7100 series. You can read that. I'm just going to scroll through. There's not much different. There is no difference here except everything on page 2 versus page 1 is brass. 7212, our gizmo here, made of brass. $73.12, $73.22, and as you read the differences between all of these, you will understand how they work. Then you have very much less expensive double-acting gravity pivots. You'll see these in cash wrap doors in your local gas stations and coffee shops, things of that nature, as well as other Bommer items like their 3029 spring, double-acting spring hinges. If you do purchase the adjustable tension model, and you've gotten yourself into some trouble in terms of it not centering, you'll go through these installation instructions. I've also made a video on that. You can hopefully find it online that walks through the steps of how to reset the tension on that. So which one are you going to use? Well, the first question I would ask is, how heavy is your door? That would be the very first question I ask. The 7212, again, 50 pounds. You might say, well, my door is a little bit heavier than that. Well, you're going to need to look through for something bigger than that, in fact. Anyway, the point being is, you know, making sure that you are not exceeding the capacity of the hardware. And, you know, 36 pound, 75 pound, obviously 50 pound range for these types of pivots. I've had customers actually try to install these onto a lower leaf of a door and apply granite to it. And actually they didn't do it with the 7000 series. What they did it with was the 3029. And that really caused a problem because the substantial amount of weight was literally on the top of the door. We were able to fix that problem by using a hybrid of their 7800 series floor double-acting horizontal pivot, and then using the top pivot assembly in that mix to prevent the door from falling out because of that mechanical connection that's there. Okay, now below this video here is the link to the manufacturer's page. When you click on that, that page will load. It will allow you to review not only all of the Bommer items that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog, which I would certainly recommend that you review. It's several dozen pages of double-acting, single-acting, spring-assisted hardware, hinges, pivots, hardware for lavatory doors that are also spring-assisted as well. The most common Bommer double-acting spring pivot, of course, is the 3029. hinge. If you've ever seen a Bomber product, it is very certainly a 3029. And I believe they even have it on the front of their website as well. And indeed they do, right there. The only thing I don't like about that picture is they've got the Bomber logo on this part here. I would have opened that leaf up and I would have put that right there. Anyway, let's wrap up this video on camera. In conclusion, very nice quality piece of hardware from Bommer. And I'll tell you, as I had mentioned earlier, I've been to the Bommer plating facility, and I've also been to their manufacturing plant as well. Those two facilities are separated by maybe 10 miles, whatever it is. They do a tremendous job when it comes to finishing. Very nice satin, chrome, plating over brass base material. They can do over 30 finishes in-house. And when you look at Bommer as a company, and you take their individual departments, their customer service, their shipping, their plating, their technical support, on a per department basis, they can't be beat, in my opinion. It is unfortunate that this piece of hardware does not permit their logo to be on it, because if it did, it would say Made in USA, a fact that I'm quite proud of, as has Bommer, to be most sure. Very, very nice quality people and product. Any questions on the 7212 and a 626 finish or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.